Final Fantasy Tactics is one of the most beloved properties in the franchise. So when a project adorning its name surfaced as part of the big Nvidia leak a few years ago, interest amongst the fanbase was piqued. That interest was then further piqued following the huge success that was Tactics Ogre Reborn, as it allowed players to dream about how Square Enix may adopt a similar approach for Final Fantasy Tactics, should, of course, such a project ever come to fruition. It just so happened that Square Enix were indeed busy behind the scenes, and earlier this year they announced to the world that an enhanced version of Final Fantasy Tactics, subtitled as the Ivalice Chronicles, was to be launched just over 3 months later on a multitude of systems. Since then, Square Enix has released a ton of information about this new version of the game, but there's nothing quite like going hands-on, and we were granted the opportunity to do just that at a recent play session, where we got to check out various aspects of the game, starting with the pivotal encounter at the Orbital Monastery, before taking part in a much more involved encounter at Zakil Falls. First though, some backstory. This new version of Final Fantasy Tactics is being delivered by Creative Studio 3, the studio helmed by Naoki Yoshida, and Kazutoyo Maehiro is serving as director, with Ayako Yokoyama serving as co-director. Over the past decade, Maehiro himself has become a key member of the studio, serving as a prominent individual who helped to rejuvenate Final Fantasy XIV, where he served as the main scenario writer on A Realm Reborn and then Heavensward. But soon after that expansion was delivered, he left the 14 team to write the original script for Final Fantasy XVI, before then serving as the game's creative director. But before joining Yoshida's 14 task force, Maehiro was very much an acolyte of Yasumi Matsuno, the original director of Final Fantasy Tactics and the iconic creator of Ivalice. As such, Maehiro worked on Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story, Tactics Advance, and Final Fantasy XII, with the role he fulfilled differing from game to game. On Tactics, Maehiro was placed in charge of producing the sound novels, which were interactive, choose-your-own-adventure books that were meant to be separate from the main story of the game. However, those sound novels were never released outside of Japan due to issues regarding localization. After this, he fulfilled numerous roles as part of Matsuno's core team, ranging from a quest planner on Tactics Advance through to being part of Hiroyuki Ito's team on Final Fantasy XII, where he served as a battle system designer. That's all to say that Maehiro-san is a very versatile and talented individual, and as an original member of the Tactics team, he was seen as the ideal candidate to bring such a classic game into the modern era. The approach taken is hard to classify, as there are two modes available: Classic Mode, which is a more faithful remaster of the original PlayStation version, and then Enhanced Mode, which features an experience that's more akin to recent deluxe remasters, offering upgrades to graphics and user interface, while augmenting with voice acting and other quality of life features, some of which have been pulled over from Final Fantasy XVI. It's been a pretty big undertaking, and it's not been without its challenges. Due to numerous versions of Final Fantasy Tactics existing, the developers thought long and hard about which version they wanted to resurface. In the end, they opted to use the original PlayStation version as a base, no doubt because it was the version that sold the most copies across Japan and North America, and is therefore the one that the largest portion of the player base had the strongest nostalgic feelings towards. The only problem they faced was that the source code for that original PlayStation version no longer exists, so the entire game had to be rebuilt from the ground up. This did, however, make producing the two separate modes a more streamlined process, and it meant they were able to implement quality of life enhancements to the classic version, such as incorporating the War of the Lions script with a higher degree of efficiency, as both the classic and enhanced versions of the game have the same core base. But this decision has not come without consequences. Even though the War of the Lions script has been used for the classic version, the rest of the content remains faithful to the original PlayStation release. This means all of the other War of the Lions content, including Balthier and Luso, as well as the additional jobs and side quests that incorporated characters like Agrias Oaks, have been cut. That may sour the experience for some, but there's still plenty to look forward to with the Ivalice Chronicles. For those selecting the enhanced version, Final Fantasy Tactics has received more than just a new lick of paint. The addition of voice acting really adds an extra dimension to proceedings. The War of the Lions version did, of course, also contain voice acting, but it was only used in specific scenes, and only a handful of characters were therefore voiced. This time, a concerted effort has been placed around voicing every character of note. Even the likes of Master Darlavon, a professor at the Garaland Royal Military Academy, who serves as a de facto guide for new players, receives some lines should players choose to interact with the tutorial section to learn more about how to make use of the game's various mechanics and nuances. Due to the nature of this undertaking, the new and enhanced version of Final Fantasy Tactics will not use the War of the Lions script verbatim. The core spine is still there, but subtle differences have been introduced to either help the script flow a bit better, owing to the transition from written word to spoken word, or to try and help the very dense scenario make a bit more sense. This has seen small pieces of exposition inserted into specific points of narration, or through tweaks to certain lines of dialogue. For example, right at the start of Chapter 1, some context is given to the player as to what's happening in the Kingdom of Ivalice. The idea is to help set the stage, so that there is some context for the world the players are now experiencing through the eyes of Ramza Beolv. In the War of the Lions version, the initial narration highlighted the 50 Years' War as a way of explaining how and why the Corpse Brigade came to exist. But in the Ivalice Chronicles' enhanced script, additional exposition is offered. Instead of requiring the player to assume, it clearly states the consequences of how the 50 Years' War concluded, noting that Ivalice was forced to pay enormous reparations and cede swaths of land over to the Kingdom of Audalia as part of the terms that ended the war. This serves as one tiny example, but during our short playthrough there were many more littered throughout. And given we've just published a 4-hour retelling of the entire story of Tactics, which, if you're a returning veteran of the original, we'd very much recommend you watch in preparation for diving back in again, these small touches were really great to see, and they make a huge difference. Alongside this, lore enthusiasts will also be pleased to hear that a detailed encyclopedia will be present, containing information about every single person of significance, as well as the important nations that surround Ivalice and its own regions. In addition to this, one of the rather nice features from Final Fantasy XVI, dubbed the State of the Realm, has also been ported over, allowing players to learn about various happenings as well as the people involved and their stakes in whatever action is being described based on a chronological timeline. Given how detailed everything is within this world, these kinds of additions are pretty incredible, as the story of Tactics is one where tiny details can have significant implications on how the entire scenario is interpreted. Being able to dive in via the game itself is therefore much appreciated. During that initial conflict at the Auburn Monastery, many of these changes were apparent. The voice acting added flavour without being intrusive, due to it being down to the player how quick or slow they want sequences to progress. And as it's only possible to control Ramza in this sequence, it was much easier to take in all the visual and mechanical enhancements. It's clear almost immediately that everything looks much cleaner. And this relates to the characters themselves, but also the environments and of course the improved user interface. Turn order, which was previously hidden within a menu, is now clearly visible, and it's possible to dive deep into individual characters mid-battle to check out their level, job and equipment with relative ease. For those who like to get into the details, the way everything is presented makes the experience intuitive and enjoyable. And when additional perspectives of the battle scene are thrown in, such as a bird's eye viewpoint and grid overlay, and the ability to have a much deeper view on things like party setup before venturing into the encounter, it makes strategic planning much more intuitive and engaging. Needless to say, considering how long fans have been waiting for Final Fantasy Tactics to receive an updated home console port of the original game, all of these improvements are very welcome. And as the developers divulge more and more, the package only seems to get sweeter. For example, those sound novels we mentioned earlier, which were written by Maihiro-san, that have always been exclusive to Japan, well, they are now being localized in an official capacity into every major language. That's all we've got for now though, but fret not, over the next month we have plenty of Tactics content in store for all of you, including a deep dive into the individual aspects of the Ivalice Chronicles that we're specifically excited for, a more granular look at all the major changes between this version and the previous releases of the game, and some guides that will hopefully help you to get to grips with this masterful strategy role-playing game. So be sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments how excited you are for the game's upcoming release and which platform you're intending to purchase on. Alright everyone, with that, this is Daryl signing out. As always, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of our Patreon and YouTube membership supporters, especially Benjamin Snow, Christopher Gardner, Clever Chavez, EXP Required on YouTube, Frederick Forrest, Gregory and Stephen, who are super special Onion Knight supporters, and of course, a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.